Captain Elena Vasquez stood at the observation deck of her ship, the Horizon Walker, staring at the strange moon below. After 40 years of exploring dead worlds and empty space, she had seen many things. But this place was different. The moon orbited a gas giant in the Kepler 442 system, far from any trade routes or colonies. It should have been just another rock in space. Elena pressed her weathered hand against the cool metal of the viewport. Her dark hair, now streaked with silver, was pulled back in the same practical bun she had worn for decades. Her brown eyes, sharp despite her 63 years, studied the surface below with the patience of someone who had learned that space held its secrets close. "Captain, we're getting some strange readings," called out Marcus Chen, her young sensor operator. The kid was barely 30, fresh out of the academy, but he was good at his job. "The surface is showing massive structures. They don't look natural." Elena turned from the window. The bridge of the Horizon Walker was small but efficient. Her crew of 12 had been with her for years. They were treasure hunters, archaeologists, and explorers rolled into one. They made their living finding old ruins and selling their discoveries to universities and museums. "Show me," Elena said, walking to the main display screen. The image that appeared made her breath catch. Huge crystalline towers rose from the moon's surface like frozen lightning. They were impossibly tall, stretching kilometers into the thin atmosphere. The structures seemed to bend light around them, creating rainbow patterns that hurt to look at directly. "How big are those things?" Elena asked. "The tallest one is over 10 kilometers high," Marcus said. "But that's not the strangest part. They're not showing up on normal scans. Only our deep field sensors can detect them." Elena's pilot, James Rodriguez, leaned forward in his chair. He was a man of few words, but when he spoke, people listened. "Captain, those structures, they don't follow the laws of physics as we know them. Something that tall should collapse under its own weight." Dr. Sarah Kim, the team scientist, looked up from her computer. She was a quiet woman with keen eyes behind thick glasses. "I'm reading energy patterns from the structures. They're old, Captain. Really old. My preliminary scans suggest they could be millions of years old." Elena felt her heart race. In 40 years of exploration, she had never found anything older than a few thousand years. Most alien ruins were recent compared to human civilization. But millions of years? That would make these structures older than complex life on Earth. "Take us down," Elena ordered. "Find a safe landing spot near the largest structure." The Horizon Walker descended through the thin atmosphere. The moon was small, with gravity about half that of Earth. As they got closer, the structures became even more impressive. They were made of a crystal-like material that seemed to shift and change color as the ship moved around them. Elena suited, up with her away team. Besides herself, she took Marcus, Dr. Kim, and 2 security officers, Thompson and Garcia. They had worked together many times before. Elena trusted them with her life. The surface of the moon was covered in fine silver, dust that sparkled in the light from the distant star. The structures rose around them like frozen waterfalls. Up close, Elena could see that they were covered in intricate patterns that seemed to move when she wasn't looking directly at them. "My God," Dr. Kim whispered over the comm. "These patterns are mathematical formulas, but they're using symbols I don't recognize." Elena approached the base of the largest structure. It was easily a kilometer wide at the bottom. The crystalline surface was smooth to the touch, but warm despite the cold of space. As her gloved hand made contact, something incredible happened. A section of the structure simply melted away, revealing an entrance. Soft blue light spilled out from inside. "Did everyone see that?" Elena asked. "Yes, ma'am," Thompson replied. "The structure responded to your touch." Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. The entrance was perfectly sized for humans. Not too tall, not too short. As if it had been made for them. The team entered slowly, weapons ready. Inside, the walls glowed with the same soft blue light. The corridor was straight and wide, leading deeper into the structure. Their footsteps echoed strangely, as if the mime sound was being absorbed and released in patterns. "Captain, Dr. Kim said, checking her instruments. The air in here is breathable. How is that possible? Elena didn't answer. She was too busy staring ahead. The corridor opened into a vast chamber. The ceiling disappeared into darkness high above. In the center of the room stood a platform made of the same crystal material as the walls. As they approached the platform, it began to glow brighter. Elena stepped onto it, and the entire chamber came alive. Holographic displays appeared in the air around them, showing star maps, equations, and images that moved like living pictures. It's some kind of database, Dr. Kim said in amazement. But it's not just storing information. It's actively trying to communicate. The holograms shifted and changed, showing images of space battles, dying worlds, and creatures that looked like living shadows. Elena watched in fascination as the display seemed to be telling a story. Look at this, Marcus said, pointing to one of the star maps. Those are human colonies. It knows where we are. Elena's blood ran cold. The star map showed not just the location of Earth, but dozens of human settlements across the galaxy. Some of the colonies were marked with red symbols that pulsed like warning lights. Captain, Dr. Kim said, her voice shaking. According to the database timestamp, this information is current. This system has been watching us. Elena stared at the displays around her. Whoever had built this place had been monitoring human expansion across the galaxy. They knew about Earth, about the colonies, about everything humans had built in the past 3 centuries. But why? Elena asked out loud. Why leave all this here? Why make it respond to human touch? As if answering her question, the holograms changed again. Now they showed a single image, a human figure standing in the exact spot where Elena now stood. But the figure in the hologram wasn't Elena. It was someone else entirely, someone the database had been expecting. It's been waiting, Elena whispered. This whole place has been waiting for humans to find it. Thompson's voice crackled over the comm from outside the structure. Captain, you need to see this. We're picking up similar structures on other moons in this system. And Captain, some of them are already active. Elena looked around the chamber one more time. The holograms continued to pulse and change, showing her glimpses of information she couldn't yet understand. But one thing was clear. This discovery was going to change everything humans thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. Pack everything you can, Elena ordered. We need to study this, but more importantly, we need to understand what it's trying to tell us. As her team began documenting the chamber, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that they had just opened a door that was meant to stay closed. The structures had been waiting for humans specifically. That much was obvious. But the question that frightened her most was simple. Waiting for what? The soft blue light pulsed around them like a heartbeat, and Elena realized that their quiet exploration of the galaxy had just become something much more dangerous. 3 days had passed since Elena's team first entered the crystal structure. They had set up a temporary base camp on the moon's surface, with prefab shelters and communication equipment linking them back to the Horizon Walker. Dr. Kim had barely slept, working around the clock to decode the holographic displays. Elena stood in the main chamber, watching the ever-changing patterns of light and information. The structure seemed to be learning from their presence. Each day, the displays became clearer, more focused on human language and symbols. Captain, Dr. Kim called out excitedly, I think I've figured out how to access the main database. The structure has been teaching itself English by analyzing our speech patterns. Elena walked over to where Dr. Kim stood before a particularly bright holographic panel. Show me what you found. Dr. Kim pressed her hand against a glowing symbol on the panel. Suddenly, the entire chamber filled with a voice speaking perfect English. The accent was strange, ancient, but the words were clear. Greetings, humans of Earth, the voice said. We are the architects. We have waited long for your arrival. Elena felt her heart skip a beat. The voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, filling the chamber with warmth and sadness. We know you have questions, the voice continued. We will answer them. But first you must understand the danger that faces not just your species, but all life in this galaxy. The holograms around them shifted, showing images of beautiful worlds filled with strange cities and alien civilizations. Elena watched in wonder as the display showed dozens of different species, all advanced, all thriving. These were the creators, the builders, the watchers, and many others, the voice explained. Each species reached for the stars as you have done. Each built great civilizations that spanned solar systems, and each one fell to the same enemy. The images changed, showing the same beautiful worlds now dark and empty. The cities were gone, the lights extinguished. Only empty husks remained. What happened to them? Elena asked. They were consumed, the voice replied, by beings we call the Devourers, ancient entities that feed on the life force of entire civilizations. They are not from this dimension, but they have learned to enter ours when species become too advanced, too tempting. Marcus, who had been recording everything, stepped forward. How do they consume civilizations? The holographic display showed shadowy figures that seemed to be made of living darkness. They moved between the stars like cosmic predators, hunting for prey. The Devourers do not destroy through force, the voice explained. They are far more subtle. They study each species, learning their weaknesses, their fears, their desires. Then they turn a civilization's own technology against them. Elena watched as the display showed the process. The shadow figures would infiltrate a world's communication networks, spreading doubt and fear. They would corrupt the artificial intelligences that ran the civilization's infrastructure. They would turn species against themselves, creating wars and chaos. Within a few generations, the civilization would collapse from within, the voice continued. And when the species was weak and broken, the Devourers would feed on what remained. Dr. Kim adjusted her glasses nervously. How many civilizations have they destroyed? Thousands, the voice said simply, across millions of years. We architects were among the first to recognize the pattern. We studied the Devourers for eons, trying to find a way to stop them. Did you succeed? Elena asked. The chamber fell silent for a long moment. When the voice spoke again, it was filled with sorrow. No. We failed, as did all the others. But before we fell, we discovered something that gave us hope. We found references to a species that would be different. A species that would not follow the same patterns as all the others. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. You mean humans? Yes, the voice confirmed. Every species that reaches the stars follows predictable paths of development. They create logical societies, efficient technologies, ordered civilizations. This makes them vulnerable to the Devourers' manipulation. The display showed various alien species and their technological development. Elena could see the patterns. Each civilization followed similar paths, creating similar weaknesses. But our predictions about humanity showed something unprecedented, the voice continued. Your species develops in chaotic, unpredictable ways. You create inefficient technologies that somehow work better than logical ones. You form societies that should collapse but instead grow stronger through conflict. Elena thought about human history, the wars, the political chaos, the technological dead ends that somehow led to breakthroughs. She had never thought of humanity's messy development as a strength. The Devourers have tried to infiltrate human civilization for over 300 years, the voice revealed. But they cannot predict your responses. When they sow discord, you unite against common threats. When they corrupt your technology, you create new solutions they cannot understand. Marcus looked confused. If we're so resistant to them, why are you warning us? The holographic display changed, showing recent images that made Elena's blood run cold. Human colonies going dark, ships disappearing in deep space, entire settlements found empty with no signs of struggle. Because the Devourers have grown desperate, the voice explained. For the first time in cosmic history, they have encountered prey they cannot consume through subtle means. This has forced them to consider direct action. Elena stared at the images of dead colonies. They're going to attack us directly. They already have begun, the voice confirmed. The missing colonies, the lost ships. These are the Devourers testing your defenses, probing for weaknesses. But their direct approach violates their own ancient laws. It threatens the stability of space and time itself. Dr. Kim pulled up her own readings on her tablet. Captain, this matches the reports we've been getting from Frontier Command. 17 colonies have gone silent in the past 6 months. The Devourers are preparing for total war, the voice continued. They would rather risk destroying the galaxy than allow humanity to continue existing as free beings. Your very existence threatens their control over the cosmic order. Elena felt the weight of this revelation. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. They were fighting a war they didn't even know had started. Why tell us this? Elena asked. Why leave these warnings? Because we believe you can do what we could not, the voice replied. Every other species that faced the Devourers tried to fight them using logic and conventional warfare. They all failed because they played by the Devourers' rules. The chamber filled with new images, weapons and technologies unlike anything Elena had ever seen. But mixed in with the alien designs were schematics that looked almost human in their chaotic efficiency. We have left you tools, the voice explained. Weapons and defenses that we designed but never dared to build. Technologies too dangerous for logical species to use safely. But humanity's chaotic nature might allow you to wield them without destroying yourselves. Elena studied the weapon designs. They seemed to break fundamental laws of physics, creating effects that should be impossible. Any rational species would reject them as too dangerous. There are more warning beacons like this one scattered across the galaxy, the voice continued. Each contains different pieces of the puzzle. You must find them all if you hope to prepare for what is coming. How long do we have? Elena asked. The final assault will begin when the Devourers complete their preparations, the voice replied. Our calculations suggest you have perhaps 2 of your years before they strike in full force. Helena looked around at her team. They all understood the magnitude of what they had discovered. This wasn't just an archaeological find. It was a call to arms for the entire human species. We'll warn everyone, Elena said. We'll prepare for this fight. Good, the voice said, and for the first time it sounded hopeful. Remember, humans of Earth, your greatest weapon is not technology or firepower. It is your ability to do what no logical species would attempt. When the time comes, trust in your chaos. The voice began to fade, but before it disappeared entirely, it spoke one final warning. Beware the colonies that have already fallen silent. The Devourers learn quickly. What returns from those worlds may look human, but it will not be. Elena stood in the communication room of the Horizon Walker, her hands gripping the edges of the console as she stared at the incoming message. 2 weeks had passed since her team first contacted Frontier Command about the Architect ruins. The response had been swift and decisive, and completely wrong. Orders confirmed, Captain Vasquez, came the voice of Admiral Harrison through the quantum relay. You are to cease all excavation activities immediately and return to Earth for debriefing. The artifacts you've discovered are too dangerous for civilian research. Elena's jaw tightened. Sir, with respect, you don't understand what we've found. Here, the architects left specific warnings about an imminent threat to all human colonies. We need to— Captain, the Admiral interrupted. We've reviewed your reports. While the archaeological value is undeniable, Frontier Command has determined that these Devourer warnings are likely defense mechanisms designed to frighten away potential thieves. Ancient alien booby traps, nothing more. Elena closed her eyes and counted to 10. She had dealt with military bureaucracy for decades, but this was different. Lives were at stake. Sir, 17 colonies have gone silent in the past 6 months. The pattern matches exactly what the architects described. Those losses are being investigated through proper channels, Admiral Harrison replied curtly. Your job is exploration, not military intelligence. Pack up your operation and return home. The transmission ended, leaving Elena staring at a blank screen. Behind her, Dr. Kim cleared her throat nervously. Captain, maybe we should listen to Frontier Command. We're just archaeologists. This kind of threat assessment is way above our pay grade. Elena turned to face her team. They were all gathered in the small communication room, their faces showing a mixture of concern and doubt. Only Marcus seemed to share her conviction. 2 more colonies went dark while we were talking to Admiral Harrison, Marcus said quietly, checking his tablet. Kepler 438b and Ross 128b. No distress signals, no evidence of attack, just silence. Elena walked back to the viewport, looking down at the crystal structures on the moon below. Over the past 2 weeks, her team had explored 12 more architect sites in the system. Each one had revealed new pieces of the puzzle, and the picture they painted was terrifying. "Show them the projection models, Dr. Kim," Elena said. Dr. Kim reluctantly activated the main display. A 3-dimensional map of human space appeared, showing all known colonies and outposts. Red dots marked the locations where contact had been lost. "The pattern is spreading outward from the galactic core," Dr. Kim explained. "If the current rate continues, the wave of silent colonies will reach Earth in 18 months. James Rodriguez, the pilot, studied the map carefully. Could be equipment failures, could be solar storms, could be a lot of things that aren't cosmic monsters. Elena appreciated James's skepticism. It had saved their lives more than once, but this time she knew he was wrong. "Dr. Kim, show them what we found at the 7th site." The display changed, showing detailed scans of another architect beacon. This one had been different from the others. Instead of warnings, it had contained detailed records of past devourer attacks. "The architects documented everything," Dr. Kim said. "Every species they observed, every method the devourers used, every failure to stop them. Captain, the data is comprehensive." Elena had spent sleepless nights studying those records. The devourers were older than she had imagined, and their methods were terrifyingly effective. They would study a species for centuries before making their move, learning every detail of their psychology and technology. "Look at this species," Elena said, pointing to one of the records. "The Zephyrians. They were peaceful, logical, highly advanced. When the devourers infiltrated their networks, they tried to negotiate. They offered to share their technology, to cooperate, to find a peaceful solution." The display showed the final days of Zephyrian civilization. Cities burning, populations fleeing, technology turning against its creators. "The devourers consumed them in less than a year," Elena continued. "Their logical, predictable responses made them easy to manipulate." She brought up another record. The Thoraxians were different. Warrior culture, highly aggressive, excellent military technology. When they detected the devourer infiltration, they immediately declared total war. The same pattern played out. Initial resistance, followed by systematic breakdown as the devourers turned the Thoraxians' own weapons against them. "Every species followed predictable patterns," Elena said. Peaceful species tried to negotiate. Warrior species attacked directly. Scientific species attempted to study the threat, and every single one of them failed because the devourers could predict their responses. Marcus pulled up his own research on his tablet. "Captain, I've been analyzing human military history for the past week. Our response patterns are chaotic." Elena smiled grimly. "Show them." Marcus connected his tablet to the main display. Human military conflicts appeared on the screen, from ancient battles to recent colonial wars. "Look at the Battle of Thermopylae," Marcus said. 300 Spartans should have retreated when faced with overwhelming odds. Instead, they stayed and fought, buying time for Greece to prepare. More examples appeared. The American Revolution. Colonial farmers defeating the most advanced military in the world through guerrilla tactics. World War II. The Allies winning through a combination of scientific breakthroughs, industrial capacity, and pure stubbornness. Every major human victory came from doing something that logic said was impossible, Elena added. "We win by being unpredictable, by breaking the rules, by refusing to accept defeat even when it's inevitable." Dr. Kim looked troubled. "But Captain, the architects also said that the devourers are preparing for direct assault. If they can't predict us, they'll just try to destroy us through brute force." Elena nodded. "That's where the real truth comes in." Dr. Kim, show them what we found in the deep archives yesterday. Dr. Kim hesitated. "Captain, I'm not sure we should share this information without proper authorization." "Do it," Elena ordered. The display changed again, showing technical specifications that made Elena's team gasp. Weapon designs that seemed to violate the laws of physics. Shield technologies that created holes in space-time. Devices that could manipulate matter at the quantum level. The architects designed weapons capable of destroying entire star systems, Elena explained. Technology so dangerous that using them could tear holes in reality itself. They never built them because any logical species would realize the risks were too great. Thompson, one of the security officers, leaned forward. But humans aren't logical. Exactly, Elena said. We're the only species chaotic enough to use these weapons without paralyzing ourselves with fear of the consequences. And according to the archives, we're also the only species adaptable enough to control them safely. James crossed his arms. Safely? Captain, those designs look like they could destroy the galaxy. They could, Elena admitted. But the alternative is letting the Devourers consume every human world one by one. The archives show what happens when the Devourers win, James. They don't just kill civilizations, they erase them from existence entirely. The room fell silent as her team absorbed this information. Elena could see them struggling with the implications. They were archaeologists and explorers, not warriors, but circumstances had thrust them into the center of a cosmic war. There's something else, Elena said quietly. The archives contain a message specifically for me. She activated a personal recording she had discovered the day before. The voice of the architects filled the room, but this time it spoke directly to Elena. Captain Elena Vasquez, the voice said. If you are hearing this message, then our calculations were correct. You are the catalyst we predicted, the human who would discover our warnings and understand their true meaning. Elena's team stared at her in shock. The message had been waiting specifically for her, recorded millions of years before she was born. We have seen your future, Elena Vasquez, the voice continued. Not all of it, for human chaos makes perfect, prediction impossible. But we have seen enough to know that you will face a choice that will determine the fate of your species. When that moment comes, remember this. The greatest weapon humanity possesses is not technology or firepower. It is your willingness to sacrifice everything for those you love. The message ended, leaving Elena's team in stunned silence. Finally, Marcus spoke up. Captain, how could they know your name? How could they know you would be the one to find this place? Elena had been wondering the same thing. The only explanation that made sense was terrifying in its implications. Because this isn't the first time, she said slowly. The archives hint at something called the temporal loop. The Devourers have been fighting this war across multiple timelines, multiple realities. Every time they lose, they reset the timeline and try again. Dr. Kim's face went pale. You mean this has all happened before? Many times, Elena confirmed. But according to the archives, this is the first timeline where humans evolved to be chaotic enough to break the pattern. We're the variable the Devourers can't predict or control. Elena looked around at her team, her friends who had followed, her across the galaxy, who trusted her judgment even when it led them into danger. Elena's ship emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Tau Ceti system, alarms immediately blaring across the bridge. What should have been a thriving colony world was dark, its orbital stations silent. No response to their hail, no energy signatures, from the surface cities that had housed 2 million people just 3 months ago. Captain, Marcus said, his voice tight with fear. I'm detecting debris fields where the defense platforms should be. And Captain, some of the debris is moving. Elena leaned forward in her command chair, studying the tactical display. It had been 6 weeks since they had defied Frontier Command's orders and begun their desperate race to gather intelligence from the remaining architect beacons. They had visited 12 sites, each revealing more pieces of the puzzle. But they were running out of time. James, take us in slowly, Elena ordered. Full sensors, but keep us ready to jump if anything hostile shows up. As they approached Tau Ceti Prime, the scale of destruction became clear. The planet's surface was scarred with massive craters, but not from conventional weapons. The damage looked organic, as if something had burrowed up from within the planet itself. Dr. Kim studied her readings, her face pale. Captain, I'm detecting life signs on the surface. Human biosignatures. But they're wrong somehow. Elena felt ice in her veins. The archives had warned about this, what the Devourers left behind when they consumed a world. Define wrong, Doctor. The neural patterns are human, but they're synchronized. All the surviving population is thinking in perfect unison, like a hive mind. Through the viewport, Elena could see shapes moving on the planet's surface. From this distance, they looked like people going about their daily activities, but there was something mechanical about their movements, too coordinated to be natural. Captain, Thompson called from the security station. We're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's Mayor Williams from New Geneva Colony. Elena had met Robert Williams 2 years ago during a supply stop. He was a good man, devoted to his community. But when his face appeared on the main screen, Elena knew immediately that whatever was speaking wasn't him anymore. Captain Vasquez, the thing wearing Williams's face, said with a perfect smile, "How wonderful to see you again. Please come down to the surface. We have so much to show you." Elena studied the image carefully. Williams looked exactly as she remembered him, but his eyes were completely black, and when he smiled, she could see that his teeth had been replaced with crystalline structures that pulsed with dark energy. "What did you do to the colonists?" Elena demanded. "Do to them?" Williams' voice remained cheerful, but there was something alien in its tone. "We saved them, Captain. We freed them from the chaos of individual thought, from the pain of uncertainty. They are perfect now, unified, in purpose." Behind Williams, Elena could see other colonists moving in perfect synchronization. They were building something in the main square, a twisted spire that hurt to look at directly. "The Devourers have been studying your species for 3 centuries, Williams continued. "We know everything about you now. Your weaknesses, your fears, your desperate need to protect those you love. Soon, all humans will experience the peace of unity." Elena cut the transmission and turned to her team. "How many colonies have we lost contact with since we started our mission?" Marcus checked his tablet, his expression grim. 37, Captain, and the rate is accelerating. 3 more went silent just in the past week." Elena walked to the tactical display, studying the pattern of silent colonies. The Devourers were moving in a clear spiral pattern, working their way outward from the galactic core toward the outer rim where Earth lay. "They're not just consuming the colonies," Elena realized. "They're using them as bases, turning the populations into some kind of hybrid servants. Each conquered world becomes a staging point for the next attack." Dr. Kim pulled up data from their recent beacon discoveries. "Captain, the archives we found at Site 14 contain detailed information about this process. The Devourers don't just feed on civilizations, they convert them into extensions of themselves." Elena had studied that particular archive with growing horror. The Devourers were not simply predators, they were something far worse. A cosmic infection that turned entire species into weapons against their own kind. "Show me the timeline projection," Elena ordered. The main display filled with a map of human space. Red dots marked the conquered colonies spreading outward in an inexorable wave. Based on current patterns, the infection would reach the core human worlds within 8 months. Earth in 12 months, Marcus said quietly. "Unless they accelerate." The schedule. Elena's comlink chimed with an incoming message. She recognized the priority encryption. It was from Admiral Harrison at Frontier Command. "Captain Vasquez," the Admiral's voice was sharp with authority. "You are ordered to return to Earth immediately. Your unauthorized mission has compromised critical military operations." Elena almost laughed. "Admiral, are you aware that 37 colonies have been completely compromised? That we're facing an enemy that—" "What I'm aware of, Captain, is that you've been feeding false information to civilian populations, causing panic across the outer rim. These devourer stories of yours are creating more problems than the actual equipment failures we're investigating." Equipment failures. Elena stared at the dark world below, at the crystalline spires rising from its surface, at the synchronized movements of what had once been free human beings. "Admiral, I'm transmitting our full sensor logs from Tau Ceti Prime. Look at them and tell me this is an equipment failure." There was a long pause before the Admiral responded. "Captain, these readings are concerning. But they could be the result of some kind of biological weapon. There's no evidence of the supernatural threat you've been describing." Elena felt her patience snap. "Sir, I've spent 6 weeks gathering intelligence from alien archives that are millions of years old. The threat is real. The timeline is accelerating and we are running out of time to prepare. Captain Vasquez, you are relieved of command. Commander Chen, you are ordered to assume control of the Horizon Walker and return to Earth immediately." Elena looked at Marcus, who shook his head firmly. "Sorry, Admiral, I'm with the captain on this one." The rest of her crew nodded in agreement. They had seen the evidence, lived through the discoveries. They knew the truth. "Admiral," Elena said, "we're going to continue our mission. We've identified the locations of 5 more architect beacons. If we can reach them all, we'll have the complete weapon specifications needed to fight back. Captain, if you continue this insubordination, you'll be branded as criminals. No port will take you, no supply depot will serve you." Elena looked around at her team, her family. They had followed her across the galaxy, trusted her judgment through dangers that would have broken lesser crews. Now they faced the greatest challenge in human history. "Admiral, in approximately 8 months, the Devourers will reach the core worlds. In 12 months, they'll reach Earth. When that happens, court-martial proceedings will be the least of humanity's concerns." She cut the transmission and turned to James. "How much fuel do we have?" "Enough for 3 more jumps, maybe 4 if we push the engines," James replied. "And supplies?" 6 weeks of food and water if we ration carefully," Dr. Kim answered. Elena nodded. It would have to be enough. According to the most recent beacon archive, there were 5 more sites that contained critical information, including the location of something the architects called the final key. Marcus, plot a course for the nearest beacon site. James, prepare for immediate departure. As the Horizon Walker began moving away from the dead world below, Elena caught one last glimpse of the surface. The crystalline spires were growing taller, and more were appearing across the planet's continents. Whatever the Devourers were building, it was spreading fast. "Captain," Dr. Kim said quietly, "what if we're wrong? What if Frontier Command is right and there's a conventional explanation for all this?" Elena looked at the tactical display showing the wave of silent colonies spreading across human space. She thought about the synchronized movements of the converted humans on Tau Ceti Prime, about the alien technology sprouting from their world like a cancer. "Then we'll have wasted our careers and our freedom chasing shadows," Elena replied. "But if we're right and we do nothing, then we'll have doomed our entire species." The ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving the corrupted world behind. But Elena knew they would see more like it before their mission was complete. The Devourers were accelerating their schedule, and humanity was running out of time to find the weapons they would need for the coming war. In her quarters that night, Elena studied the personal message she had received from the architects. They had warned her about a choice that would determine humanity's fate. Looking at the spreading pattern of conquered worlds, Elena suspected that choice was approaching faster than anyone imagined. The storm was coming, and humanity still didn't know it was under attack. Elena stood before the final architect beacon, her hands shaking as she placed them on the activation console. Behind her, the Horizon Walker sat damaged and barely functional. They had fought their way through 3 Devourer-controlled systems to reach this hidden moon in the Vega system, and her crew was exhausted. The beacon chamber was different from all the others. Instead of crystal walls, this one was made of some kind of living metal that pulsed with its own heartbeat. The air itself seemed to vibrate with barely contained energy. "Captain," Dr. Kim called out urgently, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the system. Something big is coming." Elena had expected this. The final key beacon was the most important site, and the Devourers would not let them access it unopposed. Through the chamber's transparent ceiling, she could see dark shapes moving between the stars, Devourer ships that looked like living shadows wrapped around cores of corrupted light. "How long do we have?" Elena asked. 20 minutes, maybe less, Marcus replied from his position at the portable sensor array. Elena pressed her hands against the beacon's control surface. The chamber filled with the familiar voice of the architects, but this time it carried a weight of finality. Elena Vasquez, the voice said, you have reached the final key. What you discover here will complete your understanding of the war you must fight. But first you must know the full truth about your enemy. The chamber filled with images that made Elena's crew gasp in horror. The Devourers were not separate beings. They were the corrupted remnants of the very first civilization to achieve interstellar travel. Billions of years ago, they had faced the same challenge every species eventually encountered, the discovery that consciousness itself was a finite resource in the universe. Every thinking being that exists reduces the total amount of consciousness available, the voice explained. When too many species achieve sapience simultaneously, reality itself begins to break down. The first civilization discovered this truth and made a terrible choice. Elena watched as the images showed the ancient species systematically destroying all other intelligent life in the galaxy, believing they were saving the universe from collapse. But the act of genocide had corrupted them, turning them into the very monsters they had sought to prevent. They became addicted to the consumption of consciousness, the voice continued. What began as necessity became hunger, and hunger became madness. They have spent billions of years feeding on the thoughts and dreams of entire civilizations. But you said humanity was different, Elena protested. You said we could resist them. You can, the voice confirmed, because humans do not follow the pattern. Every other species that reaches the stars eventually discovers the truth about consciousness and either succumbs to despair or attempts to optimize their use of it. But humans do something unprecedented. The display showed human civilization in all its chaotic glory. The wars, the conflicts, the seemingly wasteful competition between different groups and ideologies. You waste consciousness deliberately, the voice said with something approaching wonder. You create art that serves no survival purpose. You explore ideas that have no practical application. You fight wars over concepts that exist only in your minds. Any logical species would see this as inefficient. Elena began to understand. But it's not waste. It is creation, the voice finished. Every human thought, no matter how seemingly pointless, adds to the total amount of consciousness in the universe instead of depleting it. You are the only species we have observed that actually increases the cosmic supply of awareness through the very act of thinking. The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. Humanity wasn't just resistant to the Devourers. They were the opposite of everything the Devourers represented. That's why they're so desperate to destroy us, Elena said. We prove that their entire philosophy is wrong. Exactly. Your existence invalidates billions of years of genocide. If other species learn that consciousness can be created rather than consumed, the Devourers will lose their justification for existence. Dr. Kim looked up from her instruments, her face pale. Captain, the Devourer fleet has entered the system, 60 ships all converging on our position. Elena turned back to the beacon. Show me the weapons. Show me how we fight them. The chamber filled with technical specifications that defied every law of physics Elena understood. Weapons that turned thoughts into energy. Shields that protected entire star systems. Devices that could rewrite the fundamental constants of reality. These are the tools we designed but never dared to build, the voice explained. They require something we never possessed. The ability to think chaotically, to embrace contradictions, to believe in impossible things. Elena studied the weapon. Designs, her mind reeling. Any logical analysis would conclude that these devices could never work. They violated causality, ignored conservation of energy, and required operational principles that made no scientific sense. Captain, Marcus called out, the lead Devourer ship is hailing us. Elena nodded grimly. Put them through. The chamber filled with a voice that seemed to come from the depths of space itself, cold and ancient beyond measure. Elena Vasquez, the Devourer spoke. You have seen enough. Surrender now, and we will make your consumption swift. Continue to resist, and we will take your species apart piece by piece, savoring every scream. Elena looked around at her crew. They were scared, exhausted, facing an enemy that had destroyed thousands of civilizations. By every logical measure, they should surrender. You know what your problem is? Elena said to the Devourer. You've been doing this for so long that you've forgotten what it's like to face someone who doesn't care about logical measures. She activated the beacon's emergency transmission system, broadcasting on all frequencies across human space. Her message would reach every colony, every ship, every human settlement in the galaxy. This is Captain Elena Vasquez, she began. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but I need you to listen. We are under attack by an enemy that has consumed thousands of civilizations. They are already among us, controlling 37 colonies and growing stronger every day. Elena transmitted everything. The complete archive of architect warnings, the weapon specifications, the truth about humanity's unique nature. She knew that most recipients would think she was insane, but she also knew that humans had a talent for believing in impossible things. The enemy thinks they understand us, Elena continued. They think they can predict our responses because we're just another logical species. They're wrong. We're about to show them exactly how wrong. The Devourer fleet opened fire. Dark energy, weapons tearing through space toward the moon. But Elena wasn't finished. To every human who receives this message, she said, I'm transmitting complete plans for weapons that should be impossible to build. Don't think about how they work. Don't analyze why they should fail. Just build them, because right now our survival depends on doing the impossible. As the first Devourer weapon struck the moon's surface, Elena activated the final key. The beacon exploded outward in a wave of pure information, carrying the complete architect archive to every human receiver in the galaxy. Captain, Dr. Kim, shouted over the sound of alarms. The surface is breaking apart. Elena ran for the chamber exit, her crew close behind. As they raced back to the Horizon Walker, the moon shook itself apart around them. The final key had served its purpose. All of humanity now possessed the tools they needed to fight back. The Horizon Walker lifted off just as the moon's surface collapsed. But instead of fleeing, Elena ordered James to turn the ship toward the Devourer fleet, Captain, Thompson called out. We're completely outgunned. They have 60 ships and weapons that could vaporize us in seconds. Elena smiled, feeling the same reckless confidence that had driven humanity to the stars in the first place. Thompson, have you ever seen humans respond to impossible odds by doing the sensible thing? Before Thompson could answer, Elena's communication system lit up with responses from across human space. Colony governors, ship captains, military commanders, and civilian scientists, all confirming that they had received her transmission. But more importantly, many of them were already reporting initial success in building the impossible weapons. Captain, Marcus said in amazement, I'm getting reports from the Centauri shipyards. They've somehow managed to build 3 of the architect weapon designs in the past hour. The chief engineer says they work perfectly, even though he has no idea why. More reports flooded in. Colonies that had been evacuating were now fortifying. Ships that had been fleeing were turning to fight. And across human space, impossible weapons were coming online, faster than any logical species could have managed. Elena opened a channel to the Devourer fleet. This is Captain Vasquez. You wanted to see how humans respond to impossible odds? Let me show you. The Devourer commander's voice carried a note of confusion. You are 1 ship against 60. Your weapons cannot harm us. This is illogical. You're right, Elena agreed. It is completely illogical, and that's why it's going to work. The Horizon Walker charged directly at the center of the Devourer formation, its impossible weapons charging up. Behind them, across the galaxy, humanity, prepared for a war that logic said they could never win.